I was standing by the buffet table at my father's 60th birthday party when my sister Carolyn stormed across the living room and ripped the crutch from my hand. "Stop faking it!" she screamed. "You're just leeching off, Dad." I crashed to the hardwood floor. My right leg buckled beneath me and pain exploded through my body. 20 relatives laughed. Someone whistled. Uncle Gerald pulled out his phone and started filming. Aunt Patricia actually clapped and said, "Finally, someone had the guts to say it." Nobody moved to help me. I lay there on the floor of my father's house in suburban Denver, humiliated and hurting, looking up at faces I'd known my whole life. They were all smiling. What none of them knew was that my orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Andrew Brennan, was standing directly behind them in jeans and a casual sweater. He was Dad's old college roommate, invited as a guest. I watched his face change from confusion to absolute fury. 6 months before that terrible moment, I was a completely different person. My name is Deanne, and I was 28 years old, working as a physical education teacher at Mountain Ridge Middle School. I loved my job. I loved running. Every weekend I trained for marathons, and I'd completed 4 of them by the time I turned 27. Running was my therapy, my joy, my identity. After my mother died 3 years earlier from breast cancer, running was how I processed the grief. Dad struggled too. He and Mom had been married for 35 years. He was lost without her, so I started coming over more often, helping him with groceries, sitting with him during the long evenings when the house felt too empty. My older sister Carolyn lived across town. She was 32, worked in real estate, and had recently gone through a bitter divorce. She never came around much after Mom died. She said she was too busy, too stressed. I understood. Grief looks different for everyone. So I picked up the slack. I didn't mind. Dad needed someone, and I was happy to be that person. Then came the night that changed everything. It was late January, and Colorado was buried under one of the worst snowstorms we'd had in years. I was driving home from Dad's house on Interstate 25 when a truck crossed the median. The driver was drunk. He hit me head-on at 50 miles per hour. I don't remember the impact. I don't remember the sound of metal crushing or the windshield shattering. I woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed with my right leg suspended in traction. Dr. Andrew Brennan was standing beside my bed when I opened my eyes. He introduced himself, explained that he was an orthopedic surgeon, and told me very gently that my leg was in bad shape. The femur was shattered. The tibia had multiple fractures. Had already performed 1 surgery to insert titanium rods and pins. There would be 2 more surgeries in the coming months. Recovery would be long and painful. I might never run again. I cried for hours after he left. Dad sat beside me, holding my hand, and cried too. The surgeries happened over the next 3 months. Each one was brutal. The pain was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Physical therapy was even worse. Learning to use a crutch, learning to bear even the smallest amount of weight on my leg, felt impossible. My apartment was on the 3rd floor with no elevator. Dad insisted I move in with him temporarily. His house was a ranch-style single-story with wide doorways and no stairs. It made sense. I agreed. That's when things started to shift with Carolyn. She came to visit me at Dad's house about a week after I moved in. She brought flowers and a card. But her eyes were cold. She asked how long I planned to stay. I told her I didn't know, maybe a few months, until I could manage stairs again. She nodded slowly and said, "Just don't get too comfortable. Dad's not getting any younger. He needs his space." It was a strange thing to say. Dad had told me repeatedly that he loved having me there, that the house felt less lonely. But I brushed it off. Carolyn was going through her own stuff. I didn't want to read too much into it. Over the next few months, I focused on healing. Dr. Brennan was an incredible surgeon and an even better human. He checked on me constantly, adjusted my pain medications, celebrated every small victory in physical therapy. I learned later that he and Dad had been roommates in college, that they'd stayed friends over the years but had drifted apart. My accident brought them back together. Dad started inviting him over for dinner. They'd sit on the back porch and talk about old times. I didn't know that during those same months, Carolyn was working on something too. She started calling Dad more often. She'd stop by when I was at physical therapy appointments. She brought him groceries even though he didn't need them. At first, I thought she was finally stepping up, finally being the daughter he needed. But then I started noticing little comments. Dad would mention something Carolyn had said, like how expensive my medical bills must be, or how hard it must be for him to have someone dependent on him again. He'd say it casually, like he was just thinking out loud, but I could tell the words hadn't originated with him. Then came the incident with the life insurance agent. Dad mentioned one afternoon that someone had called about his policy. He seemed confused about it. He said Carolyn had given the agent his number, told him Dad wanted to update his beneficiaries. Dad said he didn't remember asking for that. I felt a chill run through me, but I didn't say anything. I didn't want to believe my sister was capable of something ugly, but I started paying closer attention. I noticed that Carolyn had been talking to other family members too. Aunt Patricia started making comments during phone calls about how I was living rent-free. Uncle Gerald asked Dad if he was sure I was really as injured as I claimed. Cousins who used to text me funny memes stopped responding. I felt the family turning against me, but I couldn't understand why. Dad's birthday was coming up in early August. He wanted to have everyone over. A big family gathering like Mom used to organize. I offered to help plan it, but he said no. Had hired caterers. He wanted it to be easy. I should just rest. So I rested. I worked on my physical therapy. I practiced standing for 30-second intervals like Dr. Brennan had instructed. My therapist took me to a park near Dad's house where I could practice on flat ground with a bench nearby for the crutch. It was slow, painful progress. But it was progress. What I didn't know was that Carolyn was following me. She was taking pictures. She was building a case. The day of the party arrived. Dad's house filled with relatives I hadn't seen in months. Some of them hugged me. Others gave me cool, assessing looks. I felt the tension, but I told myself I was being paranoid. Carolyn arrived early. I saw her whispering with cousins in the kitchen. She kept looking over at me and smiling. But it wasn't a kind smile. It was the smile of someone who knows a secret. Dr. Brennan arrived late, slipping in through the back door. He was dressed casually, just another guest. I didn't even see him come in. He blended into the crowd. The cake was cut. Everyone sang. Dad made a little speech about gratitude and family. It was sweet. I felt myself relax. Maybe it'd been wrong. Maybe everything was fine. Then I stood up to get a piece of cake from the buffet table. I was balancing on my crutch, reaching for a plate, when I heard footsteps behind me. Fast, angry footsteps. Before I could turn around, Carolyn's hand closed around the crutch and yanked it away. The force of it pulled me sideways. I tried to catch myself, but my leg couldn't hold my weight. I went down hard, my hip and shoulder slamming into the hardwood. "Stop faking it!" Carolyn shouted, holding my crutch above her head like a trophy. "You're just leeching off Dad." The room erupted, not in gasps of shock or concern. In laughter. In agreement. Uncle Gerald pointed his phone at me, filming. Aunt Patricia started clapping. Cousin Brenda yelled. About time someone called her out. I looked around desperately for Dad. He was still sitting at the head of the table, his face frozen in confusion. He didn't move. He didn't defend me. He just stared. I was on the floor, my leg throbbing, blood starting to seep through my pants where the impact had reopened something. I felt humiliation crash over me like a wave. These were people who were supposed to love me. And they were laughing. Then Carolyn bent down close to my ear. Her voice was low, meant only for me. "I've already talked to Dad's lawyer," she whispered. "You're not getting a penny. This charade ends today." She stood up and held my crutch higher. Relatives actually applauded her. She took a little bow. That's when Dr. Brennan moved through the crowd. Dr. Brennan walked calmly across the living room. His face was composed, but I could see the fury in his eyes. He reached Carolyn and placed one hand on her shoulder. She turned, annoyed, ready to snap at whoever was interrupting her moment of triumph. She didn't recognize him. "I'm her surgeon," he said quietly. "You're facing charges." The room went silent. Completely, utterly silent. Carolyn blinked. "What?" Dr. Brennan pulled out his phone. "I'm Dr. Andrew Brennan. I've been Deanne's orthopedic surgeon for 6 months. I performed 3 surgeries on her leg after a drunk driver nearly killed her. She has 3 titanium rods and 17 pins holding her femur and tibia together. She has nerve damage. She's 8 weeks away from even attempting to walk unassisted. What you just did, removing her medical assistive device and causing her to fall, constitutes assault. I witnessed it. So did everyone in this room. He turned his phone toward the crowd and started swiping through images, X-rays, surgical photos, post-operative reports. The images were graphic. I could see some relatives turning pale. Carolyn tried to recover. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. I was joking. Obviously, I didn't know it was that serious. Doctor? Brennan's voice stayed calm, but it cut like a knife. You didn't know your sister had 3 major surgeries? You didn't know she was hit by a drunk driver? You didn't know she's been in physical therapy 4 days a week for 6 months? Carolyn's mouth opened and closed. She looked at Dad. Rich, tell him. Tell him I didn't mean any harm. It's a family matter. Dad finally stood up. He looked shaken. Andy, he said, and his voice was uncertain. I'm sure Carolyn didn't mean to hurt anyone. Maybe we can all just calm down and talk about this. The words hit me harder than the fall had. Dad wasn't defending me. He was defending Carolyn. He was asking Dr. Brennan to let it go. Doctor? Brennan looked at Dad for a long moment. Then he looked down at me. I was still on the floor. My leg was bleeding. I could feel it soaking through the fabric of my pants. Rich, he said, your daughter is bleeding. She may have refractured her leg. I'm calling an ambulance. He pulled out his phone and dialed. The relatives started murmuring. Some looked uncomfortable now. Others still looked angry, like I was causing a scene on purpose. Carolyn wasn't done. She ran to the dining table where Shed left her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. She dumped its contents onto the table. Photographs scattered across the surface. This is ridiculous, she shouted. She's manipulated you too, Doctor. I have proof she's been faking. She grabbed a handful of photos and shoved them toward Dr. Brennan. See? No crutch. She's standing, walking. She's a liar. The relatives crowded around. I heard gasps. Aunt Patricia said, I knew it. Uncle Gerald zoomed in with his phone camera to capture the photos. My heart sank. I knew exactly what those pictures were. They were from my physical therapy sessions at the park. My therapist had me practice standing for 30 seconds at a time, building strength, learning to bear weight. The crutch was always just out of frame, leaning against a bench 5 feet away. But in the photos, it looked like I was walking around freely, unassisted. Dr. Brennan took the photos from Carolyn's hand. He studied them carefully. Then he pulled up something on his phone. He held it next to the first photo. This was taken on June 14th at 10:30 in the morning, he said. According to my records, Deanne had a physical therapy session at that exact time. Her therapist's notes say she practiced standing for 3 sets of 30 seconds each. Weight-bearing exercises are a required part of her recovery. Without them, her muscles would atrophy and Shed never walk again. He swiped to the next photo. This one is June 21st at 11:15. Another therapy session. Same exercises. He kept going, matching every single photo to a therapy appointment, showing time-stamped notes, GPS data, therapist signatures. Carolyn's face went red. You're lying. You're both lying. Dr. Brennan knelt beside me. He gently lifted the hem of my pant leg. The fabric was soaked with blood. A wound on my shin had reopened from the impact. He took a picture of it with his phone. Then he looked up at Carolyn. This is a fresh injury, caused by your actions. The bleeding indicates she's likely refractured something, or torn the surgical site. This is evidence. I heard sirens in the distance. The ambulance was close. Carolyn was panicking now. She turned to the relatives. Don't you see what's happening? She's got all of you fooled. She's been living off Dad for months. She's manipulating him. But some of the relatives were looking uncertain now. Cousin Brenda had her hand over her mouth. Uncle Gerald had lowered his phone. Dad just stood there, silent. The paramedics arrived. 2 of them, a man and a woman, carrying equipment. They came straight to me, kneeling on either side. The male paramedic started checking my vitals. The female paramedic examined my leg. She looked up at Dr. Brennan. You're the surgeon? He nodded. Dr. Andrew Brennan, Denver Orthopedic Associates. This patient is 6 months post-op from 3 surgical repairs to her right femur and tibia. She was assaulted and forcibly deprived of her assistive device, resulting in a fall. I witnessed the entire event. The female paramedic nodded and started preparing a stretcher. The male paramedic stood up, glancing around the room. His eyes landed on Carolyn, who was still holding my crutch. He frowned. "Wait," he said. "Aren't you the realtor who sold my mother that house with undisclosed flood damage?" "We sued you." Carolyn went pale. "What?" "No. I don't know what you're talking about." The paramedic looked at Dr. Brennan. "Yeah, she lost her license for 6 months for fraud. Just got it back a few months ago. My mom almost lost her life savings because of the repairs." The room shifted. I could feel it. If Carolyn had committed fraud professionally, maybe she was capable of lying now, too. A few relatives exchanged glances. Aunt Patricia's face was tight with anger, but she didn't say anything. Carolyn screamed, "This is insane! You're all insane!" She threw my crutch on the floor and stormed toward the door. "Dad, if you don't stop this right now, I'm done. I'm leaving and I'm never coming back." Dad looked at her. Then he looked at me on the floor, surrounded by paramedics. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. Carolyn waited 5 seconds. Then she grabbed her purse and walked out, slamming the door behind her. We heard her car start and peel out of the driveway. The paramedics lifted me onto the stretcher. Dr. Brennan told them he'd follow in his car. Dad said he'd come too. Nobody else offered. As they wheeled me out of the house, I looked back at the relatives still standing in the living room. Some looked ashamed, others looked angry. None of them said goodbye. The emergency room at Denver General was bright and cold. They took me straight into an exam room, transferred me to a bed, and started cutting away my pant leg to assess the damage. "Doctor." Brennan stood nearby, talking quietly with the ER doctor, explaining my surgical history. Dad sat in a chair in the corner, his face gray. The x-rays came back an hour later. Hairline fracture. "Not catastrophic," the ER doctor said, "but it's going to set you back. You'll need a boot, and at least 3 more months of modified therapy." 3 months. I closed my eyes. It'd been doing so well. It'd been so close to graduating to a cane. Now I was back at square one. Dr. Brennan squeezed my shoulder. "We'll get through this, Deanne. I promise." After they fitted me with a boot and wrapped my shin wound, the ER doctor left. It was just me, Dr. Brennan, and Dad. The silence was heavy. Finally, Dad stood up. He walked to the side of my bed. His hands were shaking. "Deanne," he said, and his voice cracked. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand what Carolyn was doing. She was so convincing. She kept telling me you were exaggerating, that you were taking advantage, that I needed to protect myself. I started to believe her. I thought maybe she was right. I doubted you, and that's unforgivable." I looked at him. The man who'd raised me, who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd held me when Mom died. He looked old suddenly. Frail. "After your mom passed, I've been so lost. I didn't know how to be alone. Carolyn kept visiting, kept talking, kept filling my head with things. I wasn't strong enough to see through it. I'm ashamed. I failed you tonight. When you needed me to stand up, I froze. I'll never forgive myself for that." Tears were running down his face. I wanted to forgive him immediately. I wanted to say it was okay, but it wasn't okay. What happened tonight had broken something between us. "I need space," I said quietly. "I need you to leave." Dad's face crumpled. "Deanne, please. Go," I said. "Just go." He nodded. He bent down like he was going to kiss my forehead but stopped himself. Then he walked out. Dr. Brennan pulled a chair close to my bed. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "I'm filing a formal complaint against your sister. What she did was assault. I'm also reporting her to Adult Protective Services. She attempted to manipulate your father, who may not meet the technical definition of elderly, but the pattern of behavior is concerning. You don't have to be part of any of this if you don't want to be, but I won't stand by and let her get away with it." I nodded. "Thank you." He handed me a business card. This is a lawyer I know. Susan Hartley. She handles cases like this: family exploitation, disability discrimination. If you want to pursue legal action, she's the best. I took the card. My hands were shaking. A hospital social worker came in next. She asked me gentle questions about my living situation, my support system, my safety. I told her everything. She took notes, nodded, said she'd follow up. Then a police officer came. Young, professional, kind. He took my statement, photographed my injuries, collected Dr. Brennan's contact information as a witness. He said he'd be in touch. By the time everyone left, it was after midnight. A nurse brought me a blanket and dimmed the lights. I was alone. My leg throbbed. My heart ached. I'd lost my family in one night. I cried myself to sleep. I woke up at 2 a.m. to my phone vibrating on the bedside table. A voicemail. I almost ignored it, but something made me listen. "Hi, Deanne," a woman's voice said. "You don't know me, but I'm Jennifer Walsh. I heard about what happened at your dad's party. I'm Carolyn's ex-sister-in-law. I was married to her ex-husband's brother." I know that sounds confusing. What I'm trying to say is, I know what Carolyn is. She did the same thing to my family. She manipulated my father-in-law, isolated his children, changed his will, and stole $200,000 before we caught her. I have documentation, police reports, court records, everything. If you want to fight back, call me. I'll help you. She can't keep getting away with this. I sat up in my hospital bed, my heart pounding. I wasn't alone. Someone else had been through this. Someone else understood. I saved the voicemail and tried to go back to sleep. But hope is a strange thing. Once it starts, it's hard to stop. I called Jennifer Walsh the next morning. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was warm, steady, the voice of someone who'd been through hell and come out the other side. She said she could come to the hospital that afternoon. I said yes. She arrived at 2. Jennifer was 45, with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She carried a leather messenger bag that looked heavy. She pulled up a chair beside my bed, set the bag on her lap, and said, "I'm going to tell you everything. It's going to be hard to hear, but you need to know what you're dealing with." She opened the bag and pulled out a 3-inch binder. Inside were documents, police reports, court filings, medical records, bank statements, emails, text messages, the evidence of a nightmare. Jennifer explained. She'd been married to a man named Thomas. Thomas' brother had married Carolyn 12 years ago. The marriage lasted 9 years before it fell apart. During those 9 years, Carolyn had befriended Thomas' father, a widower named Eugene. Eugene was 74, lonely, grieving his wife. Carolyn started visiting him, bringing him meals, offering to help with bills. It seemed kind at first, but then she started whispering things. She told Eugene that his sons were stealing from him, that they were waiting for him to die so they could take his money, that he couldn't trust them. Eugene, confused and frightened, started pulling away from his children. He stopped answering their calls. He changed the locks on his house, and then he changed his will. 50% to Carolyn, 25% to each son. The sons were devastated. They tried to talk to their father, but Carolyn was always there, always interfering. Then Eugene's health started declining rapidly. Had been healthy before, active, sharp. Suddenly he was confused, lethargic, falling. The sons suspected something was wrong. They hired a private investigator. The investigator discovered that Carolyn had been controlling Eugene's medications. She'd been giving him incorrect doses, mixing medications that shouldn't be combined. It wasn't clear if she was trying to kill him or just keep him dependent and confused. Either way, it was criminal. Eugene died 6 months later. The autopsy was inconclusive. The DA couldn't prove intent. But in civil court, the sons sued Carolyn for exploitation and undue influence. They won. The judge ordered her to return the inheritance money. She had to pay back $200,000, but she faced no jail time. The scandal contributed to her divorce. Her ex-husband's family wanted nothing to do with her. Jennifer closed the binder. That was 3 years ago. I kept tabs on her because I was terrified she'd do it again. When I heard through the family grapevine what happened at your father's party, I knew. I knew she was following the same playbook. I felt sick. She's doing it to my dad. She's been isolating him, planting doubts, trying to change his will. Jennifer nodded. The photos she took of you, the lawyer she contacted, the accusations, it's all part of the pattern. She finds someone vulnerable, usually a parent or elderly relative, and she drives a wedge between them and their other children. Then she positions herself as the only trustworthy one. She's patient, she's smart, and she's ruthless. What do I do? Jennifer reached into her bag again and pulled out another business card. This is Susan Hartley. She's the lawyer who helped us. She specializes in elder abuse and family exploitation. She's expensive, but she's worth it. Tell her I sent you. She'll take your case. I looked at the card. It was the same name Dr. Brennan had given me. That felt like a sign. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my defense. Susan Hartley came to see me while I was still in the hospital. She was in her 50s, sharp and no-nonsense. She listened to everything, took notes, asked pointed questions. Then she said, "We can fight this. We can win. But it's going to get ugly. Your sister isn't going to back down easily. Are you ready for that?" I thought about Dad sitting in that chair, frozen, not defending me. I thought about the relatives laughing as I hit the floor. I thought about Carolyn whispering in my ear, "You're not getting a penny." "Yes," I said. "I'm ready." Susan got to work. She subpoenaed my medical records, therapy notes, financial statements. She interviewed Dr. Brennan and my physical therapist. She gathered character witnesses. My school principal, my colleagues, my friends. She built a case that showed I wasn't a leech. I was a daughter who'd been helping her grieving father, a teacher who'd been injured in a tragic accident, a person who'd done nothing wrong. Meanwhile, Carolyn filed a petition with the court. She wanted emergency guardianship of Dad. She claimed he was being manipulated by me, that he was mentally incompetent, that he needed protection. The court date was set for 2 weeks away. Dad was served with papers at home. He called me, panicked. "Deanne, I don't understand what's happening. Carolyn's lawyer is saying I'm not capable of making my own decisions. They want to control my medical care, my finances, everything. What do I do?" "You get your own lawyer," I said. "You fight back. But she's my daughter, so am I." There was a long silence. Then he said, "You're right. He'll call someone today." Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I was discharged from the hospital after 3 days and went back to Dad's house. It felt strange being there, knowing what had happened in that living room, but I had nowhere else to go. My apartment still had stairs. I couldn't manage them. Dad and I existed in an awkward truce. He was devastated, apologetic, trying to make amends. I was hurt, angry, not ready to forgive. We moved around each other carefully, speaking only when necessary. Then, 3 days before the court hearing, Susan called me. "Deanne," she said, and her voice was tight with controlled fury. "I've been going through your dad's financial records. I found something. 2 months ago, your dad had a life insurance policy, $500,000. You and Carolyn were 50-50 beneficiaries. Your sister tried to get him to change it to 100% in her favor. He refused. But she didn't stop there." "What do you mean?" Susan sent me an email. I opened it. Inside were screenshots of messages between Carolyn and a life insurance agent. The messages were cold, calculating. Carolyn was asking questions. How long after a policy change does someone have to live for it to be valid? What happens if someone dies within 6 months of changing beneficiaries? Are there investigations? I felt my blood turn to ice. "Susan, what is this?" "I think your sister was planning something. I've already contacted the police. They're opening an investigation." I couldn't breathe. Was Carolyn planning to hurt Dad? To kill him? Susan said she didn't have proof. Not yet. But the pattern was there. The life insurance inquiries, the attempts to isolate him, the medications he took for blood pressure. Susan had found printouts in Carolyn's trash during a legal discovery process. Articles about medication interactions. Ways to cause a heart attack that looked natural. The police got a warrant. They searched Carolyn's house. They didn't find anything concrete. No poisons, no weapons. But they found the printouts. They found notes about Dad's health conditions. They found a draft email to Dad's doctor asking about his prescriptions. It wasn't enough for criminal charges, but it was enough to scare the hell out of me. Dad finally understood. Susan showed him the evidence. He sat at his kitchen table and wept. He said, "I could have lost everything. I could have lost you. I could have lost my life. And I almost let her do it because I was too weak to see the truth." I wanted to stay angry at him, but watching him break down, I couldn't. Had been manipulated by someone he loved. Had made terrible mistakes. But he was waking up now. He was seeing Carolyn for what she was. The night before the court hearing, something happened that changed everything. It was almost midnight. I was in my room, trying to sleep, when I heard a car pull into the driveway. I got up, limped to the window, and looked out. It was Carolyn's car. I heard the doorbell ring. I heard Dad get up, walk to the door. I grabbed my crutch and moved into the hallway, staying out of sight. The door opened. Carolyn's voice was sweet, concerned. "Hi, Dad, I know it's late. I just wanted to check on you. I've been so worried. Can we talk? Just the two of us?" Dad hesitated. Then he said, "Sure, Carolyn. Come in." They went into the living room. I crept closer, staying in the dark hallway, listening. Carolyn said, "Dad, I need you to understand something. Deanne is dangerous. I think she might hurt you. I think you need to be very careful with your medications. Maybe I should help you organize your pills. Make sure you're taking the right doses. You know how confusing it can be?" My stomach dropped. She was doing it. She was suggesting she control his medications, just like Shed done with Eugene. Dad's voice was calm. "That's thoughtful of you, Carolyn. You know, I've been thinking, maybe I should update my will. I'd like you to come back tomorrow with your lawyer. Let's make some changes." Carolyn's voice brightened. "Really? Oh, Dad, I think that's so smart. I'll call him first thing in the morning. Well, get everything sorted out." She left a few minutes later. As soon as the door closed, Dad turned on the lights. He looked at me standing in the hallway. Then he pulled out his phone. Had recorded everything. It was legal in Colorado to record conversations with consent of one party. He was that party. He called Susan immediately. She told him to call the police. They came within 20 minutes, took the recording, added it to their file. Carolyn had just incriminated herself. The courtroom was packed. Carolyn's petition for emergency guardianship was being heard by Judge Linda Morrison, a woman in her 60s with a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. I sat at a table with Susan and Dad. Carolyn sat across the aisle with her lawyer, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit. Carolyn looked polished, professional. Shed dressed carefully. Conservative skirt suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back. She looked like a concerned daughter. I was in jeans and a loose shirt, my leg in a boot, dark circles under my eyes. I looked like exactly what I was. Someone barely holding it together. Carolyn's lawyer stood up first. "Your Honor, we're here today because my client is deeply concerned about her father, Richard, and the undue influence being exerted upon him by his younger daughter, Deanne. Richard is 60 years old, recently widowed, and vulnerable. Deanne has been living in his home for 6 months, rent-free, claiming a disability that my client has reason to believe is exaggerated if not entirely fabricated. We have photographic evidence showing Deanne walking without assistance, despite her claims that she requires a crutch at all times." He presented the photos. The judge looked at them without expression. The lawyer continued, "My client believes that Deanne is isolating Richard from his family, manipulating his emotions, and positioning herself to inherit his estate to the exclusion of his other children. We're asking this court to grant Carolyn emergency guardianship so that Richard can be protected from further exploitation." Susan stood up. "Your Honor, may I present evidence to the contrary?" The judge nodded. Susan called Dr. Brennan to the stand. He was sworn in and took his seat. Susan asked him to explain his relationship to me and to Dad. He did, clearly and calmly. Then Susan asked him to explain my medical condition. Dr. Brennan pulled out a tablet and brought up images. X-rays, surgical photos, post-operative scans. He walked the judge through every detail. The shattered bones, the 3 surgeries, the titanium rods and pins, the nerve damage, the long, painful recovery. Then Susan handed him the photos Carolyn had presented. Dr. Brennan matched each one to my physical therapy schedule. He showed the judge time-stamped notes from my therapist, GPS data from my phone, progress reports. He explained that the exercises in the photos were prescribed, supervised, and medically necessary. Susan asked, "Dr. Brennan, in your professional opinion, is Deanne faking her disability?" "Absolutely not. Her injuries are catastrophic. She's made remarkable progress, but she has months of recovery ahead. The suggestion that she's faking is not only false, it's insulting to someone who's endured immense pain and worked incredibly hard to heal." Susan thanked him and he stepped down. Then Susan called me to the stand. I limped up, took my seat, and was sworn in. Susan asked me to tell the judge what happened at Dad's birthday party. I did. I described Carolyn ripping away my crutch, the fall, the laughter, the humiliation. I described the blood, the pain, the new fracture. Susan asked, "Deanne, have you ever asked your father for money beyond the $10,000 loan he gave you for medical bills?" "No." "Have you tried to isolate him from his family?" "No. I encouraged him to stay in touch with everyone." "Have you tried to manipulate him into changing his will?" "No. I didn't even know what was in his will until all of this started." Susan presented financial records. Bank statements showing I'd paid rent and utilities at my own apartment for 6 months, even though I wasn't living there. Statements showing I'd been paying my own medical bills, my own therapy costs. I wasn't leeching. I was barely surviving financially. Then Susan played the recording. Carolyn's voice filled the courtroom, sweet and poisonous, suggesting she helped Dad organize his medications. The judge's expression hardened. Susan said, "Your Honor, we have evidence that Carolyn engaged in similar behavior 3 years ago with her ex-husband's father. She manipulated him, isolated him from his children, changed his will, and was found liable in civil court for exploitation. She was ordered to return $200,000. This is not a concerned daughter. This is a woman with a documented pattern of elder abuse." Jennifer Walsh was called to testify. She presented the binder, the court records, the evidence from Eugenia's case. The judge took her time reviewing everything. Carolyn's lawyer tried to object, tried to discredit the evidence, but it was too late. The pattern was clear. Finally, the judge looked at Carolyn. "Miss, Deanne's sister," she said. "I've reviewed the evidence. Not only am I denying your petition for guardianship, I'm issuing a restraining order. You are to have no contact with your father or your sister. If you violate this order, you will be arrested. Furthermore, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney's office for potential criminal charges related to attempted exploitation of a vulnerable adult." Carolyn's face went white, then red. Then she stood up and screamed, "This is insane. She's the one who's manipulating him. She's stealing my father. I'm the oldest. I deserve everything." The judge banged her gavel. "Bailiff, remove her." Security grabbed Carolyn's arms. She fought them, still screaming, "You're all going to regret this. Dad, don't let them do this. I'm your daughter. I'm trying to save you." Dad looked at her with tears in his eyes. He said quietly, "No, Carolyn, you're trying to destroy me. And I almost let you." They dragged her out of the courtroom. Her screams echoed down the hallway until a door slammed, and there was silence. The judge looked at Dad. "Mr. Richard, I strongly encourage you to seek counseling. You've been through a traumatic experience. You need support." Dad nodded. "Thank you, Your Honor. I will." The hearing was over. Susan filed additional paperwork, a civil suit against Carolyn for assault, emotional distress, and damages related to my medical setback. We were seeking reimbursement for all costs related to the new fracture. It wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. That evening, Dad invited a few relatives over. Only the ones who'd reached out to apologize in the weeks since the birthday party. Uncle Gerald didn't come, Aunt Patricia didn't come, but Cousin Brenda did. A few others did. About 8 people total. Dad stood in his living room and gave a speech. He said, "I owe all of you an apology. I owe Deanne an apology. I was weak. I was manipulated. I let someone poison me against my own daughter. I stood by and watched her be humiliated and I did nothing. That makes me complicit. I'm ashamed. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making this right. He pulled out a folder. Inside was his updated will. Had worked with his lawyer that week. The estate was now split. 50% to me, 50% to a charity for disability rights and accident victims. Carolyn got nothing. He said, I'm not doing this out of anger. I'm doing this because it's right. Deanne has been nothing but loving and supportive. Carolyn showed me who she really is. I have to accept that. Cousin Brenda came up to me afterward. She was crying. Deanne, I'm so sorry. I was jealous. I always thought you were Dad's favorite and I let Carolyn use that against you. I should have known better. I should have defended you. I didn't. I'm sorry. I hugged her. It's okay. I forgive you. She said, no, it's not okay, but thank you. Healing started that night. Slowly, painfully, but it started. 2 months later, I got a letter. It was handwritten, addressed from a psychiatric facility in Boulder. The return address had Carolyn's name. I almost threw it away. But something made me open it. The letter said, Deanne, I don't know what happened to me. After my divorce, something broke inside. I became obsessed with money, with security, with not being abandoned again. I saw you with Dad and I couldn't stand it. You had everything I wanted. Love, stability, purpose. I had nothing. I know that doesn't excuse what I did. It doesn't make it okay. I'm in treatment now. Mandated by the court as part of a plea deal. They're saying I have personality disorders, financial trauma, control issues. I'm on medication. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did. I hurt you. I hurt Dad. I hurt myself. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I loved you once. Before I became this, I don't know if that person exists anymore. I don't know if I can ever be her again. But I'm trying. I'm sorry, Carolyn. I sat with that letter for a long time. It didn't change what Shed done. It didn't erase the pain. But it was the first time Shed taken any responsibility. The first time Shed admitted she was wrong. I didn't write back. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe I never would be. But I didn't throw the letter away either. I kept it. Because as much as I wanted to hate her completely, part of me still remembered the sister she used to be. Before Mom died, before the divorce, before everything fell apart. People are complicated. Hurt people hurt people. That doesn't make it okay. But it makes it human. 6 months after the court hearing, my life looked different. I was walking with a cane now. Not a crutch, a cane. It was progress. Real, tangible progress. Dr. Brennan said I was ahead of schedule. He said I was one of the most determined patients Head ever had. I told him I learned determination from having to fight for my own truth. I moved into a new apartment. Ground floor, wide doorways, accessible bathroom. It was small, but it was mine. Dad helped me move in. We carried boxes together, laughed at the chaos, ordered pizza. It felt normal. It felt healing. Dad and I were rebuilding our relationship. It wasn't easy. There were still moments of tension. Moments when I remembered him sitting frozen at that birthday party. But we were trying. We had dinner together every Sunday. We talked. Really talked. He was in therapy now, working through his grief over Mom, his guilt over Carolyn, his fear of being alone. He was learning to be stronger. He started volunteering at a local charity that helped accident victims. He said it was his way of honoring what he'd been through, of making something good come from the pain. He was funding a scholarship too, in Mom's name, for disabled students pursuing education degrees. It was beautiful. It was healing for both of us. Dr. Brennan became more than my surgeon. He became a friend. He and Dad golfed together on weekends. He checked on me regularly, not just as a doctor but as someone who cared. He told me once that my case had changed him. He said He'd seen too many patients isolated by family members who resented their needs, who saw them as burdens. He started a patient advocacy program at the hospital, training staff to recognize signs of family exploitation and abuse. My pain was creating change. The extended family remained fractured. About half had reconciled with me. They'd apologized, acknowledged their mistakes, asked for forgiveness. I gave it, though some relationships would never be the same. The other half, including Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gerald, stayed estranged. Aunt Patricia sent a legal threat claiming Wed defamed Carolyn. It went nowhere. Uncle Gerald just disappeared, blocked our numbers, refused contact. I made peace with it. Not everyone deserves a place in your life, even if they're family. Mountain Ridge Middle School reached out 4 months after the accident. My principal, a kind woman named Sarah Thompson, called and said, "Deanne, we miss you. We want you back. But we understand you're not ready for the classroom yet. What if we created a position for you? Curriculum development, adaptive PE program design, something you can do from home until you're physically ready to return?" I cried when she said that. I thought I'd lost my career. I thought I'd never teach again. But they were making space for me. They were adapting. I said yes immediately. I started working from home, designing programs for students with disabilities, creating inclusive PE curricula, training other teachers. It was different from being in the classroom, but it was meaningful. It was purpose. And it reminded me that my value wasn't tied to what my body could do. It was tied to who I was. I started dating someone I'd met in my support group for accident survivors. His name was Ethan. Had lost his left arm in a construction accident 2 years earlier. He understood the frustration, the grief of losing physical abilities, the long road of recovery. We took things slow. Coffee dates, park walks, long conversations about pain and healing and hope. It felt safe. It felt real. Jennifer Walsh became a true friend. We met for coffee once a month. She called me on hard days. She reminded me that I wasn't alone, that surviving Carolyn's manipulation was possible, that life could be good again. She was proof. And Carolyn completed her court-mandated treatment. 6 months in a psychiatric facility, intensive therapy, medication management. She was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and complex trauma stemming from her divorce and childhood issues I'd never known about. The treatment helped, according to her therapist's reports that were shared as part of her probation. She was learning accountability, empathy, boundaries. She was released 4 months ago. She moved to Arizona, far from Denver, far from us. She got a job in retail management. She was living quietly, staying out of trouble. We had no contact. The restraining order was still in effect. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready to speak to her. Maybe someday, maybe never. Both were okay. The civil suit settled. Carolyn agreed to pay $20,000 over 5 years to cover my medical expenses related to the new fracture. It wasn't about the money. It was about her acknowledging, in a legal and binding way, that she'd hurt me. That mattered. My leg would never be the same. I would never run marathons again. I would always walk with a cane. There would always be pain on cold days, stiffness in the mornings, limitations I had to accept. But I was walking. I was working. I was living. And I was teaching my students something I'd learned the hard way. Your worth isn't determined by what your body can do. It's determined by who you choose to be when everything falls apart. One day in late spring, I got a call from Sarah Thompson. She said, "Deanne, we're organizing a 5K walk for disability awareness. It's in 3 weeks. Would you be willing to participate? Maybe even speak at the opening ceremony?" I said yes. The day of the walk was bright and warm. Hundreds of people showed up, students, teachers, families, community members. There were people in wheelchairs, people with prosthetics, people with canes and walkers and service animals. There were people who looked perfectly healthy but carried invisible disabilities. It was beautiful. I stood at the microphone before the walk began. I looked out at the crowd and saw Dad holding a sign that said, "Proud of my daughter, Deanne." I saw Dr. Brennan standing beside him. I saw Ethan in the crowd, smiling. I saw Jennifer. I saw colleagues and students and people whose names I didn't know but whose faces told me they understood. I told my story. Not all of it, just enough. I told them about the accident, the long recovery, the family betrayal, the fight to be believed. I told them about hitting the floor at my father's birthday party and thinking I'd lost everything. I told them about the people who showed up, who believed me, who helped me fight back. I said, disability doesn't make you a burden. Ableism and cruelty make people treat you like one. And when you're at your lowest, the people who show up, who believe you, who fight beside you, those are your real family. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. Loyalty does. Showing up does. The crowd applauded. Some people were crying. Then the walk began. I walked the whole 5K route. It took me an hour and 20 minutes. My leg ached. I had to stop 3 times to rest. But I finished. Dad walked beside me the whole way. Dr. Brennan joined us for the last mile. Hello. I'm delighted to assist you with our voice services. Choose a voice that resonates with you. And let's begin our creative audio journey together. Not revenge, not someone else's destruction, but your own rebuilding, your own peace, your own life, reclaimed. I picked up my phone and texted Dad. Thank you for today. Thank you for showing up, he texted back immediately. Thank you for letting me. I love you. I love you too, I typed. And I meant it. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. But we were on our way. It's been a year now since that birthday party. A year since Carolyn ripped my crutch away and I hit the floor. A year since I thought my life was over. I'm 30 now. I still walk with a cane. I still have pain, but I'm teaching again back in the classroom part-time. My students made me a welcome back banner that said, Miss Deanne is our superhero. I cried when I saw it. I told them I wasn't a superhero, I was just someone who kept going when things got hard. They said that's what a superhero is. Maybe they're right. Dad and I are solid now. We have our Sunday dinners. We talk about everything. Mom's memory, Carolyn's absence, his therapy, my recovery. He's different now. Stronger. More aware. He says he'll spend the rest of his life proving he's the father I deserve. I tell him he already is. Dr. Brennan retired last month. He said 30 years of orthopedic surgery was enough. He's traveling now, spending time with his grandchildren, living the life he'd always planned. But before he left, he came to my classroom. He talked to my students about perseverance, about advocating for yourself, about the importance of believing people when they tell you they're in pain. The students loved him. He gave them signed copies of his book about sports medicine. When he hugged me goodbye, he said, "You changed my life, Deanne. You reminded me why I became a doctor." Thank you. I think about Carolyn sometimes. I wonder if she's okay, if the treatment helped, if she's found any peace. I don't hate her anymore. I don't love her either. I just feel sad for her, sad for the sister she used to be. Sad for the life she destroyed trying to control things she couldn't control. I heard through a relative that she's engaged now, living in Tucson, working as a store manager. Part of me hopes she's changed. Part of me will never trust that she has. Both can be true. Ethan and I are talking about moving in together. It's terrifying and exciting. He understands my fears, my triggers, my need to move slowly. He's patient, he's kind. He sees me, really sees me, and he stays. That's love. Jennifer and I are planning a trip together next summer. We're going to the Grand Canyon. She said we're going to stand on the edge and scream our stories into the void and let them echo back. She said it's cathartic. I believe her. I've started speaking at conferences about disability rights and family exploitation. I tell my story to rooms full of social workers, doctors, lawyers, advocates. I tell them what it felt like to not be believed. I tell them how close I came to losing everything. I tell them that one person showing up, one person believing you, can change everything. They listen. They take notes. They thank me. They say I'm making a difference. I'm writing a book too. This story, but longer, deeper. A memoir about pain and betrayal and the hard, beautiful work of rebuilding. My literary agent says publishers are interested. Well, see, even if it never gets published, writing it has been healing. The extended family is still divided. Aunt Patricia and Uncle Gerald never apologized. They doubled down on supporting Carolyn, even after all the evidence came out. I've accepted that. You can't force people to see truth if they're committed to their version of the story. I've stopped trying. But the relatives who did apologize have become closer than ever. Cousin Brenda and I talk every week. She's going back to school to become a therapist. She says my story inspired her. She wants to help people navigate family trauma. I'm proud of her. My students are thriving. The adaptive PE program I designed is being used across the district now. Kids with disabilities, kids recovering from injuries, kids who've been excluded from traditional PE are finally included. They're learning that their bodies are capable, that movement can be joyful, that limitations don't define worth. It's the work I was always meant to do. The accident led me here. Sometimes I look at my cane and feel grateful for it. That sounds strange, maybe. But it's true. The cane is proof I survived, proof I fought, proof I didn't let them break me. Last week, I ran into someone from Dad's birthday party. Cousin Brenda's husband. Who'd stood in the corner and watched me fall without helping. He stopped me in a grocery store parking lot. He said, "Deanne, I need to apologize. What we did that night was unforgivable. I was a coward. I'm sorry." I looked at him. I said, "Thank you," and I meant it. But I also knew I didn't need his apology to be okay. I'd already forgiven myself for not being able to control other people's cruelty. That was the hardest forgiveness of all. I think about the 6 words Dr. Brennan spoke that night. "I'm her surgeon. You're facing charges." 6 words that changed everything. 6 words that made people pause, that brought truth into a room full of lies. 6 words that saved me. But the truth is, I saved myself. Dr. Brennan gave me a platform, gave me credibility, gave me a witness. But I made the choice to fight back. I made the choice to pursue legal action, to tell my story, to refuse to be silenced. That was me. That was my power. And that's what I want you to understand if you're listening to this and you've been through something similar. If your family has betrayed you, if people don't believe your pain, if you've been gaslit and manipulated and left on the floor while others laughed, I want you to know, you are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not a burden. You are worthy of belief, worthy of support, worthy of love. And you have the power to fight back. It won't be easy. It will cost you relationships. It will force you to face hard truths about people you love. It will require you to stand up when you're already broken, to speak when you're terrified, to keep going when everything in you wants to give up. But you can do it. I know you can. Because I did. And if I can, you can. The people who love you will show up. The people who see you will believe you. The people who are meant to be in your life will stay. Everyone else, let them go. It's not your job to convince people of your worth. It's your job to know your worth and surround yourself with people who see it too. Recovery isn't linear. Some days I wake up and my leg feels strong and I feel invincible. Other days I can barely get out of bed and I cry from the pain. Both days are valid. Both days are part of the journey. Be patient with yourself. Healing takes time. And remember, your body may be broken, but you are not your body. You are your courage, your resilience, your refusal to be defeated. You are every time you got back up. You are every tear you cried, and every breath you took afterward. You are every moment you chose to keep going. That's who you are, and that person is unbreakable. I'm standing in my classroom right now, looking at my students. They're playing adaptive volleyball, laughing, sweating, competing. Some are in wheelchairs. Some have prosthetics. Some have invisible disabilities. They're all beautiful. They're all whole. They're all exactly who they're supposed to be. One of them waves at me. I wave back. This is my life now. Not the life I planned, not the life I thought I'd have, but a good life. A meaningful life. A life I fought for and earned. And am proud of it. Am proud of me. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to fight for your own truth against people who were supposed to love you? Have you ever been betrayed by family? Doubted when you needed belief? Abandoned when you needed support? How did you find the strength to keep going? I'd love to hear your story. Leave a comment below and let's support each other. We're not alone in this. And if this story resonated with you, if it helped you feel less alone, or gave you hope, or reminded you of your own strength, please hit the like button. Subscribe to hear more stories like this. Stories about real people facing real pain and finding real healing. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. You never know who's fighting a battle in silence. Your share might be the thing that helps them feel seen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for believing me, for believing in the power of truth, for believing that broken things can heal and broken people can become whole again. You're stronger than you know, and you're not alone. Ever. Take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, and keep going. The world needs you. Until next time, this is Deanne, reminding you that your worth isn't determined by your body, your family's opinion, or anyone else's judgment. Your worth is inherent. You matter. You always have. Now go prove it to yourself.